Good morning. Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Today is Wednesday, June 11th, 2025, and you're in the Java Cafe. My name is James Jimmy Hills, and I'm your host this morning. It is Waterfront Wednesday. I just realized last night that we are in our 22, 23, 24. We're in our fourth year of a partnership with the Coalition for a Resilient and Inclusive Waterfront. And so for the past 4 years, they come in on the second Wednesdays. Different iterations this year, but we are here today with Jay Meekum from Boston Harbor Now. They are the community engagement. I was giving them a promotion to the operations director or VP of something. I know I'm going to get in trouble. And I should know this. I just said 4 years. They are no stranger to the Java Cafe. And so we're going to talk about the wonderful things that are going on with the partnership with Crew, Coalition for Resilient and Inclusive Waterfront, as well as what Boston. Oh, I said that like a real Bostonian. Boston Harbor are now. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Hit that share button. I will acknowledge something funky is going on with Facebook. And so I'm here monitoring the chat in general, as well as monitoring Instagram and James W. Hill's Facebook page. And so if you're watching on there, hopefully you're able to engage. Please chat. And also we can see the folks that are in over on the Java with Jimmy page as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get ready to bring in Jay. I am so glad to see them and chat with them. So good morning, Jay.
Good morning, James. How's it going?
It is and see this tells you how far we go back, because most people will go right ahead with Jimmy and they said James. And so I am so elated to have you here and excited, and also catch us up on what's going on. This is your fourth time.
It's my fourth time. That might make sense. It's also I'm finishing out my fourth year at Boston Harbor Now. So I guess 4 is a good number.
I sat last night and realized it's been 4 years. So I'm glad to have you here. Please tell the audience what's going on and catch us up, because there is, let's just name that, the mission of the Coalition for Resilient and Inclusive Waterfront. Its mission is to be inclusive, to show the great diversity in use, but also in those that use and this debate, I always get in trouble with the mileage of the water, what do you call it? The coastline, the waterfront area.
The water sheet.
The whole, I'm learning something new today, but let's just name that these are interesting times. And so, please feel free throughout the show just to name, Boston Harbor Now's commitment and just to the inclusiveness. And so with both Boston Harbor Now and Crew, this is something that prior to the space that we are in now, that there was a movement around this anyway. So I did a whole lot of commentary there. Good morning. Greet the folks and you know what to do. Oh, in case you forgot, give me one word for, you're a vet, so let's make this interesting. Give me one word for, the important. Okay, I'll be nice. Give me one word for the importance of the things like DEI on the water.
Yeah, one word to describe that.
Yeah, at the end of your greeting. So I got you a little bit. You're a vet, so I know you can handle. All right, folks, please go ahead and welcome Jay into the cafe and let them know how excited you are to have them here.
Thank you so much, James. Yeah, like James said, I'm Jay Meekum. My pronouns are they, them. And I'm a community engagement manager at Boston Harbor Now. I am delighted to be here chatting with all of y'all today. Like Jimmy said, this is my fourth time on the cafe, so I'm super happy to be here. And I'm also finishing out my fourth year at Boston Harbor Now, which means that I've gotten the pleasure of really seeing sort of a pretty full arc of the Coalition for a Resilient and Inclusive Waterfront as well. So I think that it's really important, especially as James was noting, that throughout all of the chaos and there's a lot of despair, a lot of negative energy, and a lot of places where DEI and the people and places we love, that they're, being attacked in a lot of ways, that um, the work of the Coalition for a Resilient and Inclusive Waterfront, your work, James, right? Like the work that many of us are doing, it's so important to stay in community, to stay consistent, and to continue showing up. So I think that, you're asking me about a word that describes some of the importance of DEI along the waterfront. And I think that there's a portion where my brain just said joy, right? That like part of diversity, equity, and inclusion is how like we help make the world a little better and how we rectify some of the things and the infrastructure that has been in place that decreases the ability for lots of different types of people to be able to enjoy a public space. So I think joy is potentially what I'm going with, although I know that there's a lot of other words we could use to talk about DEI on the waterfront.
Mm-hmm. And we're in our morning hour, so maybe at some point we can have an after dark and explore some of those other words. But the reality is that, as I said before, Crew, Boston Harbor Now, all of the other partners, this was a priority prior to the times that we are in now. And so, Jay, let us know. Like, you've been at Boston Harbor Now for 4 years. I'm sure, I don't know verbatim, but you could probably articulate the mission, right there. But from your own words, what is the mission of Boston? I mean, just Boston Harbor Now is now an acronym. Is it, let us know the mission of Boston Harbor Now.
That's a good question. I also wondered about now being an acronym because of the capitalization. It's not that maybe we should make one up. We can come up with it here. But I think, Boston Harbor Now is just 100% centered on partnership, right? Like we understand that there are a lot of places where sometimes we just need a little bit of help to connect the dots. So Boston Harbor Now is really dedicated to continuing to make sure that access and equity and inclusion on the waterfront, on the Boston Harbor Islands, on the Harbor Walk, right, on our waterfront parks, that we are all getting better, right? That the spaces, hopefully they're being better maintained, right? But that like programming and the folks who are able to be there, that all of that continues sort of in the direction of, the ideal that you would be able to walk outside to your harbor walk, to your beach, Carson Beach, M Street Beach, Constitution Beach, right? Like all of these different places that are so lovely that you get to go do what you want and need to do and have a really lovely and fulfilling time with your friends and community. So, everything from some of the working port side of that, where we need to connect the dots, all the way to how we are helping make sure that waterfront developers understand what best practices are for how we make sure that like we're actually being prepared.
Say that again.
Wait, which thing am I saying again?
About the waterfront developers.
Listen, I mean, it's so important that developers and everyone who's doing just construction, we have to be aware of like what's happening now and what's coming in the future. Obviously, the city of Boston and so many folks have been doing really, really good work on helping create guidelines and best practices for that. And Boston Harbor Now and other partners who are part of the coalition, we are definitely all part of a chorus of folks who are helping to hold some accountability to make sure that, developers are doing the best that they can for the community and the environment.
I really had to, and hold on, because things are, I can't, okay, there we go. I was talking with you about things with the Wi-Fi earlier. Mine tried to act up real quick, but it's so important to talk about that, and you can't have this conversation talking about Boston Harbor Now's mission. I'm sure climate justice, environmental justice is a part of that. A couple of years ago, as you know, Mariama White Hammond, the former chief of climate and environment, talked about, and I learned that we talk about developers and design, that it's designed for use, but then also as, we see the impact of climate to also be, we talk about safe spaces. I just thought about this in two areas, DEI and diversity, but safe as far as the climate, because if there's a flood, these areas and developers need to take into consideration absorbing flood water and things like that. And that way, when it goes back out, we clean it up and then go back to use. And so I just had that thought when we were talking about that, inclusion piece and what Boston Harbor Now does. Now, Boston Harbor Now also, as a part of that, does a lot of events. Solo, Pierce Park comes to mind. You do a lot of partnership with them and others. And so, and we'll talk about, is it tonight? Tomorrow. There's a big event tomorrow. And I went one year and good God, the only thing
I remember, Jimmy, how you thought that was the way the island looked. That was the funniest thing. You'd only been to spec on spec. And then next time you were like, where are the tables? And I was like, sir.
Jay, we're not supposed to say that publicly because I remember it was in the meeting, right?
Yeah, it was in a meeting.
When Jay said to me, and I was when they said it, I literally was like, wait, what? No. So we'll get into that and how that even happened. And so that's one of the events. Again, there's events with the coalition. We have Warterfront, a kind of mini Waterfront Wellness Week coming up this month. And so
June 14th to the 20th.
So that is a whole week. Only reason why I said mini, because usually they do about 8 days. And so
this year, I think the focus switched, right? We've got 4 waterfront wellness weekends instead of 1 waterfront week.
We'll extend them out. And we'll just tease a little bit that, next year is the 5th year and they're we're the calm before, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. I was going to say the calm before the storm, but okay, let's get back. So what's going on this summer? If you can wrap up with spectacle, and then we'll talk about the spectacle I made of myself in that meeting. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you mentioned, spectacle on spectacle is happening tomorrow. I think it's, many people say it's the island party of the season, and honestly, it is a delight and an enjoyment, but also it is one of the events that we throw annually that helps make our work possible. Boston Harbor Now is the nonprofit partner for the National Park Service. And so we do a huge amount of work out on the Boston Harbor Islands, and especially with all the things that have happened this year, a lot of our work in the first 6 months of this year has really been focused on how can we best support our partners and colleagues at the National Park Service, as well as obviously the Department of Conservation and Recreation. So, it's definitely outside of the norm, spectacle on spectacle. The majority of the events we're doing are free, super discount access. And so, it's not, right. But that's because it is helping really make the way for, us to be able to do the work we've been doing and support, all the partners, including the National Park Service as well, which has been something that I found to be really important, especially this year.
One of the other things, and as you mentioned, I just want to put the link up while we're here, and then I'll put the also to BHN's Boston Harbor Now's events page as well. But the Waterfront Wellness events through our partner who's sponsoring this episode, the link to, all right, let me go over here because I'm going to get in trouble. Let me put it also on my personal page. Jay, if you anyway, it's just a whole lot going on here.
Yeah, I know you've got to do all the things, but yeah, we've got a whole bunch of events coming up, right? They're starting on, I think the 5th. Well, yeah, starting on the 14th, which is a Saturday. And I think it's going through the 20th because there's also generally the original Waterfront Wellness Week has been focused as well around Juneteenth, just as a way of really incorporating the importance of that date and occasion. And so this year, yeah, the Waterfront Wellness Weekend. We love a weekend that spans to longer. It'll be June 14th to the 20th. And honestly, there are events happening every day. So you can do, Tai Chi on the Greenway, as well as there's going to be activity most days. You can do some volunteering with horticulture, truly just a gamut of things. There's a Juneteenth celebration at the ICA Boston. There's a children's magician show from the Friends of the Charlestown Navy Yard. I think one of the really cool things about something like Crew highlighting these events is that, you know, absolutely some of these partners ended up like doing an extra event because of this weekend, but so frequently this is actually a space to highlight the work that partners are doing. I think that sometimes it's really surprising how easy it is to not know that there are things happening for free that you can do every day in Boston. And so I really hope that also as people are, you know, taking a look at all these events that are happening in the next week or two, that you can take a moment and figure out, you know, what do you want to do in July? What do you want to do in August? Because I think that the waterfront, the islands, public spaces, green spaces, blue spaces in the Boston area and beyond are just so priceless. And there's like never a better time than now to go bring a friend, bring a neighbor, you know, go spend some time, like do something. If you have the time, do something good for yourself, take care of yourself, and do that in the open air, right? Like that's something that can be really beneficial.
Well, let's go there. And I'm so glad, folks, that they said this, because the self care piece is me and the water. It maybe not on this coastline, but my relationship with the well. Hold on, let's before we go into the water and the self care, let's talk about the spectacle that I made on Spectacle. So you all know that every year, thanks to the partnership with Crew, we do a signature event for Waterfront Wellness Week. And so Jay and the team and TDS, we were all planning. And my point of reference and first of all, let me tell y'all, Spectacle on Spectacle, it's not often you've heard me not have words. It is an event. It is an event. And folks like the president, Vicky, I believe, is there from the aquarium, and others supporters of Boston Harbor Now and the waterfront. And so there was a big complimentary oyster bar. There were drinks. I think there were live musicians. Didn't Lisa Bello? Was that the event that Lisa?
That was. Yep.
So
wow, she can sing, huh? Like that was a great. Yeah.
Listen, the little plug, but she has an event coming up. But the thing was, it was this big, grandiose, wonderful event. And as much it was that, it was also welcoming to everybody. And you saw from shorts and tanks to, some beach appropriate gowns and things and sequins. So when we were planning our event, I had Spectacle in my mind. And the event turned out great last year. We had a great time. We had great food. I met, is it Jason that runs the food spot? Who is that?
Yeah, from last year. Yeah, I think Jason of Finesse. They're not out there this year, but yeah, Jason was out there last year.
Yeah. So I met him, and it was still a great event. Even, the weather got interesting, but the boat ride and whatnot was amazing. And so, I just wanted to share. And if you all know me, you know that when they clarified, the island was there and
the rest of the furniture was not.
Furniture. I know we weren't doing oysters. Ian and Tracy would be like, yeah, but no, I'm messing. So all right. You talked about, the self-care piece of the waterfront. And in every episode, we talk about that relevance. And again, in these times, prior to these times, Crew was working on this. But what can I ask a little personal question? What do you personally get out of your time? Yes, it's your job, but the good thing about that is a lot of that is on the water. So what does that do for you?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think as I've been reflecting on sort of, I had that, I went to college. That was a 4-year experience for me. So sometimes I think about things in 4 years as I've been considering working at BHN for 4 years. 4 years before this, I was working in campaigns and worked so many hours a week. And I really wanted to be able to.
What kind of way? Hold on. Political campaigns?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I was really like, wow, after working so many hours during the pandemic inside on a computer, running like relational organizing, doing all sorts of things, I was like, wow, I would just love to be able to be outside more. And so really starting off, that was something that I remember one of my first weeks, I got to deliver a bunch of tickets for the Eastie Community Cruise and just really got to explore the Eastie waterfront for the first time. And I remember just stopping on a blue bike on the water and just being able to sit in the sunshine for a minute or two and take a second to ground myself. And there was just some real beauty in the gratitude of getting to see all the things and feel the breeze and look at the water. And I really think since then, um, part of this job, like you said, obviously it's a job, but it it is so I feel so privileged to be able to spend the amount of time I do out on the Harbor Walk, at Mowgli Park in South Boston, at Carson Beach. And I think that, like I was saying before, obviously not everyone has the time to do a lot of self-care. I understand that there is real privilege and time and like resources that come with taking care of yourself. So right, like that needs to be totally understood, which is part of why like we offer programming that is all inclusive of like a free dinner, right? Like a sunset cruise that has dinner, it's got music, there's something for the
Mhm.
family because we know most people can't afford to pay for that sort of experience. And so I think that resilience is a big word that can encompass a lot of things, right? From like literal infrastructure and how like you pave something and how it can be better for the rain, all the way to like the ways that we are like growing within ourselves and in community to best take care of ourselves and our neighbors. So I think one of the things that's adjacent to my work here at Boston Harbor Now is that actually, Jimmy, because of you, last year or the year before, you brought on Nancy from Office of Emergency Management, just like one of the
Yes.
best humans ever. And I went and signed up for the community emergency response team. And
Yep.
so, yeah, last year I got to be part of the first cohort in 10 years. And I'm actually now a team lead for Boston CERT. And so that experience has actually been so important to where I'm at in this section of my career because I just realized that the intersection, listen, I just realized people have known this. There's so many smart people who have talked about this, but like that the intersection of like resilience, emergency preparedness, how like we're ready for climate change, literally to how like how to respond when something happens in your community, those skills are connected. So part of what we've been focusing on and working on is like how can we provide as many opportunities for people to build those skills and learn the things they need to learn to take care of themselves? Because whether or not that's connected, to being prepared for a big storm, whether it's connected to a heat event, whether it's connected to like having a really bad day and not knowing how to handle like interpersonal conflict, the skills are connected. And so I think that is part of why the way that like you approach the waterfront and public spaces, it can be transformative, right? And some of that is a personal decision on how you want to do that. And also some of that is literally, are there infrastructural barriers that make it so you can't enjoy this space, right? Like, are there cultural barriers, right? Is there race, like what has been happening here to make it so you couldn't? And so you're right. The Coalition for Resilient and Inclusive Waterfront has been working on that. Boston Harbor Now, we've been dedicated to that. And also, this year started, November happened, and we were like, we're continuing onward. Obviously, we're making sure we do our research. We want to know how we are best protecting staff, program participants, all of those folks. But there is not a way outside of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like when we think about how we get to a world that is better,
Yep.
it is always through community building, community action, and like community taking care of community. And
It,
that's you have to do that with diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's like literally part of community.
they're part of community. There's even medical science that proves the more diversity, equity, and inclusion
Yep.
among, from a medical standpoint, it helps with different types of diseases to every day, just learning different cultures. And you think about cultures, yes, some of the first things we think about is a culture's food and their music and their dancing and whatnot. But good way to wrap this up, Jay. You started out and said that your word was joy.
Yeah.
And all that you just talked about, it does propagate joy for us to be able to walk on the waterfront, to be able to know that there are organizations, while there are entities and movements to decrease resilience, to decrease. I had a little breakthrough today because I don't know if you know, I have an issue with the word resilience because
Yeah.
the way you become more resilient is to constantly be, tougher skin. You
Mm.
sometimes got to get hurt, get a scab, and that skin is a little tougher. So resilience for me, I've been
It
on a
can.
road.
Right,
But
it can have too much of the pull yourself up from the bootstraps, right? Too much, right? Because it can't just be like you fix like climate change, right? Like that's not, a corporation wanting you to feel bad for your usage, right? Like that's not resilience, right? Like you don't need to feel like guilty about everything you do. So yeah, I
absolutely.
hear that on resilience. Yeah, I really respect that.
And we got another cert partner in here too. I'm sure if you know
Yes.
Shad, but that connection, that's just an interesting byproduct. But that resilience piece, I think, is important in a manner that it if we must be resilient from that context, then being resilient on the waterfront. And I'll also admit to you, you talked about resources with self care. I have a new, and this isn't a plug, this is relevant. I've been wearing this t-shirt. Seriously, I've been wearing a t-shirt called "My Self-Care is Expensive." I'm going somewhere with this, meaning that when you talked about resources, my waterfront experience tends to be a little bit expensive. It takes resources to hit
Mm.
the beach a little south down at the end of the right corner of the United States. So in talking with you, I remember one year before COVID, I literally took a week off from work and I literally was walking over by what's the hotel over by Long Wharf where the big dome, I call it dome.
Arch Rose
Arch,
Rose Ward.
yeah,
Yeah,
over
heard of
there. And
that.
I just really was taken in. I think I saw the sign about the relation to Black history in the trade movement there on the water. And so I've been fighting, looking at budget, and I'm like, maybe I'll, stay locally. Salem as part of the coastline as well here in Massachusetts. So
Absolutely.
that was even helpful for me today because if I have to stay K, I'll just,
You have to stay okay. I know it's hard. It's hard to self-care.
and that's
You could
real.
also go explore the living seawalls, like talking about resilience. Go check them out. Those have been installed for a little bit with the Stone Living Lab and so many partners. They're the tiles that like mimic environments that are found sort of in the ocean. And so
Mhm.
there's so many things that are growing out there. So that's a fun new thing that you could explore if you were staying.
Jay, I'm just going to say, and we peeped it just because my eyes are very observant doing this for 5 years. They got so excited they hit the laptop.
I did.
And
I
they,
did. I saw that.
but for me, what that said was there's excitement about the sea. You said living seawall.
Yeah, the living seawalls, the stone living labs. They're the first living seawalls in North America, coming from a super cool project out of Australia. So definitely recommend checking it out, especially for youth who I think really need to see something that is hopeful. Um, that's a place where you can go learn some really cool science and also feel proud of the work that like people are doing in this space.
Absolutely. Well, Jay, I'm excited that this is the fourth. Um, I don't know if any will happen before next year, but next year will be in our 5 year anniversary sort of celebration. And so you'll be 5 years at Boston Harbor now. Crew will be in existence for 5 years, and it'll be your fifth appearance.
There you go. Thank
So
you so much for having me. I always appreciate getting to come on here. I always learn. And I'm, grateful
me
to get
too.
to talk a little bit too long. It's nice to talk with a friend, so I appreciate you.
Did you say too long?
Well, yeah, I think I talked more than you did today, which is wild. I want to listen to you.
No, so that's interesting because I should be talking less, and I find myself often in Europe that I will set up a question for 45 seconds and then ask you to answer it in 15. So that was a good thing today that you talked more. So folks, go ahead and put the comments in, thanking Jay for being here. We're so honored to have them here. So I will see you if not before sometime
This
maybe
summer.
yeah this summer but definitely sometime in August there's something going to drop very soon and a couple of other things and we'll be talking.
All right, I'll keep my ears and eyes peeled.
All right. I'll talk to you soon and good to see you. And tell everyone over at Boston Harbor now I said hey.
Will do. Thanks
All
so much,
right.
everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you. Folks, we were so honored to have Jay in the Java Cafe today. And it's always refreshing when they're here. But just to reiterate the importance of the water, taking care of it, climate, environmental change, and things like that. So that is very, very key. So we're going to get ready to wrap up because at 12 p.m. today, we are coming back for part 2 of a conversation we started last week with Daniel Carrillo, otherwise known as Terminology of the Good Dad Gang. He's going to come back. We're going to have a little deeper conversation and do a deeper dive into his story, into the work that he's doing supporting dads. So please plan on coming back for a special brew of Midday Java with Good Dad Gang. And we will see everyone back at noon. Thank you so much for being here. I will, if you're here, then I don't need to apologize because you're here. There is definitely something going on with Facebook and StreamYard to where comments are not coming through and different things. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that, but you can always for sure go to YouTube or you can go to Java with Jimmy on Facebook. If by chance you see this on the James W. Hills page, we'll figure it out. Well, they need to figure it out. So, all right. Thank you for being here. We will be back at 12 noon today with Good Dad Gang. So we'll talk to you then. Have a great next 90 minutes and we'll see you for midday.